Part 15. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 141. From the lively and bustling scene where demons danced wildly at the beginning, to the deserted scene now, it makes people feel as if the carnival among the heroic spirits had never happened. Saber stood alone in the atrium. Although she was no longer confused, the young queen's heart was still full of bitter and complicated emotions. Is there no one in this world who can understand my royal ways? He was misunderstood by his ministers, despised by his enemies, and even his master felt that he was not worthy of being a king. Was he really that bad? Maybe, he understands me, right? But it is a pity that he is not my master. If I can become his heroic spirit and fight for him in this Holy Grail war. Saber also had a bitter smile on her face as she thought about this. It was such a terrible idea that she would actually think of such a thing. No matter how miserable Emi Yakiritsugu is, he is still his master. It's a pity that he doesn't understand himself, and this man who understands himself is his enemy. It seems, you and Emi Yakiritsugu don't get along very well. As if he saw Saber's thoughts, Yayu said with a gentle smile. The girl was stunned for a moment, her body stiffened for a while, but she just remained silent and didn't say anything more. This is none of your business. Don't forget that if we meet again after tomorrow, we will be enemies to the death. No. I just think it's a little funny. Emi Yakiritsugu shot himself in the foot after all his tricks. Yayu shook his head. Emi Yakiritsugu tried his best to snatch his holy relic, but in the end he summoned a disobedient servant. He must be very annoyed, right? For him, berserker, who only obeys orders, or assassin, who specializes in hunting in the dark, is the most suitable servant for him. It's a pity that he used his holy relic to summon the upright Saber, a king with the character of an innocent little girl. It is indeed incredible to Yayu that Saber with such a character can become the king. Anyone who is a king is ruthless and decisive in killing. Whether it is rider or archer, Yayu can be sure that both of them are tyrants like butchers, and countless people have died at their hands. It seems that the original stunt of drawing the sword was indeed successful, otherwise it would be impossible for a little girl like this to sit on the throne. But even so, King Arthur's empire was still buried by her most trusted people, and ultimately came to a sad end. For Yayu, he feels more pity for Saber, but it does not mean that Yayu can agree with everything that the girl who is the king has done. In his opinion, Saber is indeed a little girl who only knows how to dream, and rider and archer is too different. The reason why he comforted the despairing girl not long ago was because he felt that she was too pitiful. The girl is innocent, but what is hateful is the person who forced her to the throne. The girl really wants to be a good king, but it is a pity that she has no idea what a real king is. What on earth do you want to say? What on earth did my master do? Seeing Yayu's somewhat pitiful gaze, Saber couldn't help but raise her voice. The girl had to go to what Yayu said. She always felt that it was related to something very important. Maybe you don't know yet. With a look of sigh on his face, Yayu slowly spoke. The holy relic that Emi Yakiritsugu used to summon you was actually snatched from Einsborn. For this reason, he killed everyone in the transportation team. You were supposed to be Einsborn and belong to my heroic spirit is the right one. The expression on his face slowly calmed down, and Yayu said these words calmly. He didn't think there was anything wrong with what he said. It was Emi Yakiritsugu who was shameless, so it was natural for him to use this to fight back and disturb Saber's state of mind. Since Emi Yakiritsugu dared to do this, he didn't seem to worry about any bad effects after he summoned the servant. After all, the servant's goal is also the Holy Grail, and it is also bound by the command seal. Unless it is absolutely necessary, the servant will not conflict with the master. After all, the master can directly command the servant to commit suicide using the command seal. How is it possible? Impossible. This is not true. Not long ago, she was lamenting how great it would be if she were Yayu's servant. Not long after, Yayu told the girl such a tragic truth, which made Saber unable to even utter a scream and just shook her head in denial. Although she felt in her heart that Yayu could not lie and would not blind herself with such a lie that could be easily seen through, Saber still couldn't believe it. Is my master really so despicable? Is even the connection between master and servant that he finally used to comfort him just false? From the beginning to the end, he did not belong to Emi Yakiritsugu, he just snatched it away using despicable means. Why is it like this? Why is it like this? The girl asked herself this in her heart, and the pain and regret made her involuntarily close her eyes. On the other hand, Yayu seemed to feel that Saber didn't want to believe him, so he couldn't help but continue to speak. If you don't believe it, you can do some research or ask Emi Yakiritsugu directly. I think he won't hide such a thing from you. Yayu said this with a somewhat sarcastic smile. Although Emi Yakiritsugu is an unscrupulous magician killer, there is still something worthy of admiration. At least he dares to take responsibility and does not go back to deny what he has done. After saying these words, Yayu turned around and gently surrounded Iris Veil without even looking at Saber, who was standing there in despair. Let's go, it's late at night, let's go back to the room and rest. Iris Veil nodded lightly and glanced at Saber worriedly, but she didn't say anything more and just left the atrium with Yayu. I have to thank you, Saber. If it weren't for you, I might not have met such a good master, right? Not sure whether it was intentional or not, Flandra left at the end and looked at Saber with a smile and said such words, it was like a sharp knife piercing the girl's heart. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai. Chapter 142. The Holy Grail War has been a battle of life and death from the beginning, and it is possible for masters to use any means. But even so, Saber still hopes to fight the heroes of other time and space openly and dedicate victory to her master with her own hands. Stealing other people's sacred relics may seem very despicable, but when you really think about it, there is nothing worthy of criticism. Servants do not have the right to make choices, it is the masters who make the choices. Ryder's master's holy relics were also stolen from others, and Ryder didn't care much about it. But that's because the character of Lancer's master is not as good as his current master, and comparing his own master Emi Yakiritsugu to Yayu. Saber closed her eyes, not letting herself think about such things anymore, and the girl slowly left the Einsborn courtyard with her heavy body. At least we can't be sure yet. At least we need to confirm with the master to determine what the truth is. The sky in the east turned slightly white, and Saber didn't know what kind of mood she was in when she left Einsborn and returned to Emi Yakiritsugu's temporary base in Fuiuki City. It seemed that because he had not returned home all night, the master, Emi Yakiritsugu, also did not sleep. When Saber opened the door and entered, the man was sitting on the bedside, silently smoking a cigarette. Where did you go? He asked such a question coldly, but Saber did not answer his feelings. Rather than answering this question, Saber wanted to find out more about what Yayu said. Although it was very rude to ask the master like this, Saber could no longer resist the urge. Master, please tell me, where did the holy relic that summoned me come from? In response to Saber's question, Emi Yakiritsugu was slightly stunned, and then showed a look of understanding. I see, did you go to Einsborn? As Emi Yakiritsugu said this, Saber's whole body stiffened. The master's answer was already very clear. The holy relic that summoned her was indeed taken from Einsborn. It turns out it's not an extravagant wish, so that man should be his master? An uncontrollable anger rose in his heart, anger towards the indifferent man in front of him. If he hadn't used such despicable methods, maybe he could have cooperated with his like-minded master to fight for the Holy Grail. But why, because of this despicable man in front of me, all of this has become a fantasy. Now I still have to endure a series of despicable methods from this man. Since he had obtained himself and summoned himself using such means, why didn't he want to believe in his own power? Why didn't he want to let himself bring him victory? Is a fair duel between knights so difficult for the master? Why? Unable to suppress the anger and disappointment in her heart, Sabe asked the expressionless man in front of her in a choked tone. To get the Holy Grail. Emi Yakiritsugu said calmly as he threw the burned cigarette butt in his hand onto the ground and stamped it out. In order to get that universal wish-making machine, no matter what kind of things you do, what kind of price you pay, and what kind of sacrifices you make, it's all worth it. Emi Yakiritsugu gritted his teeth and spoke firmly, but his seemingly plain tone revealed an uncontrollable madness. If Saber looks at Emi Yakiritsugu's face, she will find that this man has a ferocious expression with clenched teeth. There seems to be something alive pulsing under his face, like twisted blood vessels. The Matu family's magic has never been good. As the nominal adopted son of the Matu family, in order to gain strength, Emi Yakiritsugu naturally accepted the transformation of Matuzukan. He did gain power, but paid a heavy price for it. How long can this broken body last after the Holy Grail War? 10 years, 5 years, or shorter? Emi Yakiritsugu didn't know, and he didn't want to think about it. As long as it could support him in winning the Holy Grail, that would be enough. Do you really want to win the Holy Grail? Even if you don't hesitate to use such despicable means. Understand the situation. I am your master. No matter how I obtain the sacred relic that summons you, it is not important anymore. What is important now is that I summoned you, concluded the contract, and gave you the ability to the magic of action in the world. Emi Yakiritsugu said this and showed Saber the command spell on the back of his hand. In the still dark room, the bright red sword-shaped command seal glowed with a strange light, and the light looked extremely dazzling in Saber's eyes. At the same time, Saber also felt the coldness all over her body. Emi Yakiritsugu's attitude was already very clear. If he had any extra thoughts, he would use the command spell directly without hesitation. I think you also understand what this means. I don't want such an unpleasant conversation to happen again. Don't forget the purpose of accepting the conditions of the Holy Grail and coming to this world. You also need the Holy Grail. In this case, cooperate well. I win this war. Emi Yakiritsugu stood up as he spoke, carrying his toolbox and walking towards the door of the room. Start the operation tonight. The target is Lancer. First, deal with this troublesome enemy and remove the curse on your arm. As Emi Yakiritsugu said this, Saber couldn't help but feel a tingling sensation on her wrist. The area injured by Lancer's noble phantasm has never healed, which is always affecting the performance of Saber's strength. Lancer and I still have a fair fight, and you, how do you want to be master? Who knows? Emi Yakiritsugu shrugged, ignored Saber's gloomy expression, and left the hotel. Sure enough, there is no way to defend even this final glory. Saber thought desperately, and slowly fell on the bed beside her with her extremely heavy body. Heroic spirits are not tired and do not need to rest, but at this moment, Saber's heart feels extremely tired. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai. Chapter 143. Come to an end, my own Holy Grail War? Kenneth, who was sitting in a wheelchair, had a decadent expression on his face. He had lost the command seal, and lost the qualification to be a master. Although Lancer is still guarding him, there is no doubt that he no longer has the right to command him. Now his master is the woman who used to be his fiancée. Sola Nazile Safiri. He used violence to force Kenneth to hand over his command seals and master's rights, but Kenneth had no intention of blaming his fiancée. Everything is because of him, because of this servant. Dire Muit Odina, the man who once seduced the woman of his lord, was still so annoying even though he came as a heroic spirit. If it weren't for him, Sola would never treat him like this. He loves her so much and his fiancée so much. Kenneth thought angrily, clenching his palms on the armrests of his wheelchair. Why is Master coming here? Miss Sola will be worried if she leaves for too long. Lancer, who was pushing a wheelchair behind Kenneth, asked. Kenneth's brows furrowed and he almost screamed. Who allowed you to call Sola by her first name? She is my fiancée, the woman who belongs to me. Who allowed you, a guy like you, to peep at her beauty? But he endured it. Now was not the time to fall out with this servant. He still needed his strength, and he still needed him to fight for him through life and death. His Holy Grail war is not over. Is there no command seal? It doesn't matter, if you don't have the command seal, just get it again. Looking up at the majestic church in front of him, Kenneth's face showed a hint of madness. This was the reason why he asked Lancer to take him out under the pretext of taking a walk at night. If he wanted to obtain the command spell and become Lancer's master again, he could only do it here. Wait for me, Lancer, outside. I'll go in and chat with acquaintances. He said this calmly to Lancer behind him, who nodded slightly and then disappeared into a spirit form. It was a happy night for Father Koto-Mine Ramesa, the supervisor of the Fourth Holy Grail War. This was his second time serving as the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Although there were difficult things to deal with, he was greatly relieved that they were resolved so quickly. The only regret is that there is no command spell that allows Tosaka Toki to receive additional rewards, and that his son Koto-Mine Kaire's servants were completely wiped out this time. But it doesn't matter, Assassin's sacrifice was not in vain. They got the most important information. Whether it's Flandra's identity as a vampire or Ryder's inherent barrier. With so much information in hand, they have already taken advantage of it, and now the preparation is enough. For them, who had drawn the strongest trump card, victory was already within their grasp. Just as the old priest was thinking this, a creaking sound came from the hall. At this time, who is coming to visit? Koto-Mine Riko was thinking this strangely as he walked out of the chapel. I'm really sorry, the church is closed. Li Zhang said this, and some artificial laughter came from the dim believers' seats. I'm not here to pray to God. Along with the laughter, there was a slight squeaking sound of the wheels of the wheelchair rubbing against metal. The figure emerging from the darkness remained seated. The figure, who was so haggard that he couldn't even stand or walk, turned out to be Kenneth Elameroe, a famous child prodigy in the past. No one who knew his past situation would have thought that he would fall into this situation. However, there is a strong willpower that can be called obsession in his eyes, and one can vaguely see the stubborn and paranoid character of the former genius magician. Although Kenneth suffered huge physical trauma that he could hardly regain his glory, through the connections of the Elameroe family, he made a deal with a puppet master living in Japan and exchanged an astonishing amount of gratitude. At least the skills of his hands were preserved, and he finally gained the ability to move freely within the range of motion of the wheelchair. The little finger of my right hand, which was embedded in a thick plaster, now also feels pain. Your Highness, Father, you are well. Contrary to the attentive smile on his face, there was a sickly madness in Kenneth's voice. This may be what drug addicts look like when they ask for drugs before the effects of the drug wear off and they show symptoms. Risei stared intently at the face of this former magic prodigy, his face showing paranoia and confusion that could not be concealed. Kenneth's experience made Ramesa Koto-Mine regretful, but from the perspective of an enemy, it was actually a good thing. Otherwise, the prodigy Kenneth Elameroe would definitely be a difficult enemy. What, did Mr. Kenneth come to the Holy Church to seek asylum? Don't worry, now that you are no longer the master, our Holy Church will protect your safety. Koto-Mine Rijhan said this with a smile. Although it was a kind reminder, it fell into Kenneth's ears as unbearable ridicule. Kenneth's eyes showed a look of hatred for a moment, but he immediately returned to his cautious and gentlemanly demeanor. As for the contract with Lancer, I concluded it in the form of a joint responsibility with my fiancée Sarah. I have absolutely no intention of calling myself a master. Sarah and I are one master. But now, isn't Miss Sarah responsible for both the supply of magic power and the management of command spells? Kenneth's gritted teeth and smile were hard to explain as an attentive smile. For strategic reasons, the command seal is temporarily handed over to Sarah for safekeeping. However, the control of the contract with Lancer is still in my hands. If you have any doubts, you can directly check with Lancer. I am undoubtedly still a glorious master. Okay, I recognize your qualifications as master. Then why did Mr. Kenneth visit the Holy Church late at night? This. Kenneth narrowed his eyes slightly and stared at Koto-Mine Ramace's arm with great greed. Of course, it's for the command seal. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 144. The moment he heard Kenneth say this, Koto-Mine Richhan couldn't help but want to laugh. After this former child prodigy was crippled, his brain was also damaged, right? I heard you right, Mr. Kenneth, you came here for the command seal. Does that mean you want to get the command seal on my arm? As Rico Koto-Mine said this, he showed his arms to Kenneth, and the densely packed command spells shone with scarlet edges in the dim light. Seeing so many command seals, Kenneth had a greedy look on his face. He nodded excitedly, with an expression like that of a madman. I'm sorry, I did say that the command spell will be used as a reward for destroying the illegal servant, but the reward has already been distributed to the master of Einsburn. As far as I know, your Lancer has not made any achievements in destroying the illegal servant. Bar. Koto-Mine Richhan said this in a mocking tone, causing Kenneth to clench his fists again. You can't say that. My Lancer successfully stopped the servant from committing murder near Matu's house that night, right? I'm very sorry. I didn't see your servant appear that night. The ones who stopped the illegal servant were Mr. Yayu of Einsburn and the master of the Matu family. As Koto-Mine Ri said this, Kenneth showed a very surprised expression. How is it possible, Lancer didn't show up? Kenneth remembered that he clearly ordered him to stop Saber that night. Why didn't that guy show up? That pedantic guy must have seen Saber fighting Castor and didn't take action because of his ridiculous chivalry, right? What a bastard. Asshole. The ultimate bastard. Why would I summon a servant like this? Okay, don't play this kind of game anymore. I'm sorry, Mr. Kenneth, but you are not qualified to obtain the command seal. Please go ahead. I need to rest. Koto-Mine Richhan said this, with a posture of seeing off guests. Kenneth showed an unwilling look on his face and wanted to say something, but Koto-Mine Richhan ignored him at all. There's nothing we can do about this. Kenneth sighed, then took out the pistol hidden in the wheelchair seat and aimed it at the priest who had turned around. The dry gunfire broke the silence of the Temple of God. Since you refuse to give me the command seal, I have no choice but to get it myself. A frightening and crazy smile appeared on Kenneth's face, and he stared in fascination at the pattern of stigmata engraved on the back of Koto-Mine Ramace's right hand. So many command seals, so many, as long as you have them, this Holy Grail war will definitely be victorious. This was the reason why Kenneth asked Lancer to stay outside and not come in. From the beginning, he planned to kill Koto-Mine Ramace directly to seize the command seal. Now go cut off his arm first. The assassination of the supervisor will definitely cause a sensation, but in this Holy Grail war, the magician who likes to use small props such as pistols has others besides himself. The first person to be named as a suspect will be the dirty rat from the Matu family. Kenneth couldn't suppress the smug smile welling up in the back of his throat. He was immersed in the ecstasy of being qualified as a master again. For the assassination of the supervisor, an act that destroyed the dignity and pride of the Elameroe family, there was no thought of self-blame. But just as he was about to push the wheelchair and walk over, there was a noise from behind. Kenneth's expression suddenly changed. He knew who it was. It must be Kotomine Kaire, the son of Kotomine Ramesa, the master of assassin in this Holy Grail war. Damn it, I have to give up the command spell. Reluctantly looking at the body of Kotomine Ramesa lying there, Kenneth pushed the wheelchair and quickly left the church. Because of the failure of the plan, Kenneth's expression never softened. After returning to the dilapidated factory where they were hiding with Lancer, they were surprised to find that Sorrow was missing. "Did you go out to search because you were worried about Mr. Kenneth?" Lancer said in surprise, and Kenneth frowned. It was obviously unreasonable for Sorrow to go looking for him. He and Lancer disappeared together. Sorrow should have contacted Lancer directly if he wanted to find him. "Owner." After a long silence between the master and the servant, Lancer suddenly called Kenneth in a cold voice. "What happened? Do you know where Sorrow went?" "That's not what I mean. It seems like something is approaching us. It's probably the sound of an engine with an automatic drive." Kenneth didn't hear anything though. However, the hearing of ordinary people is far from comparable to that of a servant. It was almost dawn, and there was no way that the motor vehicle driving towards this abandoned factory was just passing by. Thinking about it carefully, when he decided to use this place as his base, the camouflage barrier he had imposed around him was about to show its flaws. Kenneth smiled dryly while laughing at himself, who was no longer a magician. "Lancer, attack immediately and defeat it. No mercy." "Clear." Lancer nodded, immediately transformed into a spirit and disappeared. As Lancer disappeared, Kenneth's majestic posture and expression were instantly shattered. Bitterness, full of bitterness, climbed onto his unsatisfied and ferocious wrinkled face. He was once a magic genius, and he was called a child prodigy, but now he has become like this, a waste that can't even release magic. Emi Yakiritsugu, he clenched his hands into fists and beat the armrests of his wheelchair fiercely. Kenneth vented his resentment. "You rabid dog. You are the scum of magicians. Da. The sudden sound made Kenneth, who was in a state of madness, suddenly wake up. Clatter, something was thrown to the ground. Who is there?" Lancer had just gone out to meet the enemy. How could someone sneak into his side? Click, the visitor didn't seem to hide his murderous intention at all, and the sound of firearms and bullets being loaded seemed unusually cold and clear in the darkness. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 145. Although he clamored to make Emi Yakiritsugu look good, there was no doubt that Kenneth in his current state was no match for even an ordinary person. Even if Kotomine Ramesa had a little bit of hope, Kenneth would have no chance of killing him. Kotomine Ramesa died because of his own carelessness. But Kenneth couldn't calm down. The familiar sound reminded Kenneth again of the pain when the magic circuits in his body were cut off, and he couldn't help but roar wildly into the darkness. "Is it you? Emi Yakiritsugu? Is it you? Get out of here. You rabid dog and waste. You are a scum among magicians." Soon the cold touch on the back of his head made Kenneth swallow all his next words. Under the naked threat of death, Kenneth retreated. "Emi Yakiritsugu." He turned around and gritted his teeth as he looked at the man standing in front of him, with his old coat, untied hair, and listless beard. Different from the gloomy appearance, only those eyes shined brightly like sharp blades. I will never forget the man who cruelly tore apart all the magic circuits in his body at that time, the hated Matu family's lackey, a man with an expressionless face wearing a large trench coat. Kenneth's eyes revealed a piercing murderous intent. His hands holding the armrest were twisted, and his haggard face was twisted and ferocious. If he hadn't become a cripple, he might have pounced directly to clamp the neck of the demon in front of him. A piece of paper fell beside him. It was just a very ordinary piece of letter paper, but Kenneth stared at the concise words on it. If you don't want your lover to die, just look behind you quietly. Kenneth stared blankly, moving the wheels of his wheelchair to change the direction of his body. Deep in the dark abandoned factory, the light from the skylight illuminated a place like a spotlight. In the faint and cold light, the outline of a woman who fell to the ground like a drowsy figure emerged. No matter how dim the light was or how far away the distance was, Kenneth could not misjudge that appearance. Although the pain and haggardness on Sola's livid face showed that something had obviously happened, a strand of hair near her mouth trembled like a breeze. Her breathing at that time proved that she was still alive. The micro-machine gun in Emi Yakiritsugu's hand was pointed at Sara's head. Kenneth's breathing was stagnant. He looked at the ruthless man in front of him, not knowing what he wanted to do. Then another piece of paper flew down, and when he saw the words on it, Kenneth's eyes widened suddenly. There was no sign, no clue, the bright red color spread all over the earth. Both Saber and Lancer were equally shocked during the battle, both of them widened their eyes in astonishment at this too abrupt ending. The one involved, Lancer, must have been the most surprised. Because he had no expectation or awareness of the severe pain and despair. Lancer stared blankly at the red lotus flower dripping from the red gun rod to the ground. No matter how hard it is to believe, it is his own blood. His love spear pierced his heart. It was none other than his own hands that thrust the tip of the spear into himself. That certainly wouldn't be his will, nor his hope. What his red spear was supposed to pierce was Saber's heart. And it should be Saber's sword that pierced his heart. Being able to completely ignore his fighting spirit and belief and strip everything from him at will, this kind of powerful power must be the command seal. Ah! Red tears flowed from Lancer's widened eyes. Betrayal, another brutal betrayal. In order to change, in order to be truly loyal once again, he transformed into a heroic spirit and came to this world. However, what he got was a tragedy repeated, only to fully experience the despair again. With sadness. The heroic spirit looked behind him with eyes stained with blood and tears. At this moment, two masters came out of the abandoned factory to witness his end. Kenneth sat in a wheelchair with a vacant and dull expression, and another man stood holding Sara's unconscious body. That was the master of Saber whose name he had met not long ago. You, then. Lancer knelt down in a pool of his own blood and tried to speak in a hoarse and low voice. Do you want to win so much? Do you want to get the Holy Grail so much? Even my only sincere wish will be trampled, aren't you ashamed? Unforgivable, I can never forgive you. The dead who were captured by fame and fortune and belittled the glory of knights, use my blood to defile that dream. I curse the Holy Grail. Curse your wishes to become disasters. Wait until you fall into when you are in the cauldron of hell, do not forget the wrath of me, dire Muad. As he gradually lost his entity and collapsed into a hazy shadow, he screamed curse words until the last moment when he disappeared. There was no longer a glorious figure of the heroic spirit, only the voice of the evil spirit roaring with resentment. The servant Lancer was finally completely wiped out. Kenneth stared blankly at the space after Lancer disappeared. Kiritsugu casually placed the still sleeping Sara on his lap. Kenneth asked Kiritsugu in a feeble voice while gently stroking his lover's haggard sleeping face. Is this your contract? Ah, it's established. I can't kill you anymore. Kiritsugu slowly stepped back, taking out a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it. Maybe that was a signal. The gun rang out, coming from the stair assault rifle in the hand of Kuumya, who had witnessed everything from the shadow in the distance. The magician and his fiancée were torn apart and fell to the concrete floor under the force of the bullets they had despised in the past. Indeed, I can't kill you anymore, so I have to ask you to do it, Emi Yakiritsugu said expressionlessly as he spread his hands innocently. Ugh, ah. Maybe Sara was lucky enough to be killed by a gun without any pain. Kenneth tragically still hasn't stopped breathing after being beaten into a hive and knocked out of his wheelchair. He suffered multiple fatal injuries all over his body and there was no hope of survival. But even if there are only a few seconds left to live, if you have to spend it silently enduring the pain of death, it should be a cruelly long time. Ah, kill me. Sorry, that's a contract that cannot be fulfilled. Kiritsugu ignored the faint begging at his feet and replied in a cold voice while exhaling the lavender cigarette he had inhaled. The sobs of pain did not continue. Saber couldn't bear to watch anymore and cut off Kanatha's head with her sword, ending his pain. Let's go. Emi Yakiritsugu said so calmly without looking at Kenneth and Sari who fell on the ground. Naturally, there would be someone to deal with the bodies of the losers of the Holy Grail War. Of course, he didn't know yet that Koto Mine Ramesa, the supervisor, had been killed by Kenneth. In this way, 3 of the servants have retired, and only the 3 most powerful enemies are left among the surviving servants. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 146. Saber has never hated herself so much, hated her incompetence and weakness. When she finally had the chance to have a fair fight with Lancer, the girl was happy and excited. But she didn't expect that her master would completely tear the joy in her heart into pieces so quickly. Emi Yakiritsugu, my master, how insane is this man? This is really stupid, myself, is there any need to hesitate about such a thing? Saber thought this, with an almost crazy smile on her face. She raised the invisible holy sword in her hand and stabbed Emi Yakiritsugu's body straight from behind. Varied. Emi Yakiritsugu was completely stunned, and even Kuumi on the side was startled. Before this, Emi Yakiritsugu had always trusted Saber. The reason why he was so unscrupulous was because he had made up his mind that Saber would not betray him like this. Because of the chivalry that the girl insisted on and the noble ideals in her heart, Emi Yakiritsugu believed that this perfect king would not betray him. Because what King Arthur hates most is betrayal, right? Even if she really wanted to break up with herself, she would definitely tell herself openly. But, why is this happening? Why is she plotting against her behind his back? Emi Yakiritsugu couldn't understand, and the man turned around with difficulty. This sword did not hit her heart, it seemed that Saber was merciful. This sword is to repay Lancer. How about it, how does it feel to be betrayed? Emi Yakiritsugu, who turned around in confusion, heard Saber's words. The servant with a weird smile on his face looked at him like this, leaving Emi Yakiritsugu speechless for a long time. It is true that the perfect king of knights would not do such things as plotting behind his back, but it was obvious that Saber had gone crazy under her own forcing. Abandoning the so-called benevolence and etiquette, abandoning the so-called chivalry, Saber will become the most despicable heroic spirit, and become the servant that Emi Yakiritsugu expected. Bitter feelings filled Emi Yakiritsugu's heart. Just as Saber asked, the feeling of betrayal was not very pleasant. Slowly drawing out the sword, Saber stared at Emi Yakiritsugu who was kneeling on the ground with an expressionless expression. I won't kill you. That would stain my sword. You are not worthy of dying under the sword of victory oath. The contract between you and me is no longer valid. Of course, you can use the command spell however you like. I think with my resistance to magic, I can still do something as simple as killing you before executing the command spell. After throwing out such blatant threats, Saber transformed into a spirit and disappeared. Emi Yakiritsugu understood that now he had truly lost this heroic spirit and his most powerful trump card. Although he doesn't like Saber and doesn't want to act with her, there is no doubt that Saber is a very powerful servant. Even if you don't take the initiative to attack, staying by your side is still a powerful deterrent. But now this deterrent is gone. Losing servants does not mean that the Holy Grail War cannot continue, but there is no doubt that they will fall into absolute passivity. But, Emi Yakiritsugu would not give up easily. It's not over yet, Emi Yakiritsugu's Holy Grail War has only just begun. When Emi Yakiritsugu eliminated Lancer and Master, Yayu originally wanted to take Flandre to fight Rider. But just as he was about to go out, something special happened. Iris Veal. Iris Veal looked very abnormal all day today, with empty and wandering eyes, a pale face, and beads of sweat flowing down her forehead like a waterfall. Yeah, you could tell that she was pretending to be smart, and he couldn't get an answer when he asked. But when he planned to take Iris Veal out in the evening, the latter finally couldn't hold on and fainted while standing, as if he collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut off. Yayu, who didn't know what was going on, hugged his wife nervously. The slender body in his arms was unusually hot, making her understand that Iris Veal's condition was in danger. But why is it like this? Iris Veal's body was still normal not long ago, why did it suddenly become so bad? Yayu didn't quite understand. He once again felt weak and powerless. Facing his unconscious wife, he found that he was helpless. The only thing that can be known is that Iris Veal's health is in very bad shape, and there seems to be an extremely powerful force running rampant in her body, destroying the girl's vitality. What on earth what happened? Fran, do you know what happened to Ellie? Flandre, who was standing beside her, also had a stern look on her face, but it was obvious that like Yayu, she could only detect the powerful magic power and could not do anything else. Sorry, Master, I don't know what to do, but for now let's suppress the power in Ellie's body. As Flandre said this, she held Iris Veal's wrist and used her own power to suppress the power raging in her body. Yayu nodded and stood up to prepare the magic circle to suppress the magic power. After being in this world for such a long time, he still learned a lot of useful things. But just when he was about to prepare, thunder sounded again outside the house, and a certain servant who couldn't wait seemed to have rushed directly to the mansion. Not fighting behind closed doors is not the behavior a soldier should do. Do you want to fight here? Then if I can't hold back and damage the house or something, I can only apologize. Accompanied by a burst of arrogant laughter and someone's scream, the conquering King Rider came to the city with an ox cart. Yayu's brows frowned fiercely, but it happened at this time. Master, what should we do now? Flandre asked Yayu anxiously. She was trying hard to suppress the power in Iris Veal's body at this moment, and there was no way to distract herself. You take good care of Ellie and leave Rider to me. After saying these words resolutely, Yayu left the room and walked outside alone. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai. Chapter 147. There is no way for human beings to defeat heroic spirits. This is a saying that started to circulate at some point. Heroic spirits are the embodiment of human dreams and beliefs, and come to this world with the help of the magic of the Holy Grail. Not only do they possess incredible power that can be called a miracle, they also possess extremely powerful noble phantasms. A powerful noble phantasm that can easily destroy a city or a country cannot be described and judged by common sense. For example, Rider's inherent barrier, this noble phantasm eclipses even among servants. Yayu didn't know what chance he had of winning, but he only knew that the current situation would never allow him to take a step back. If he couldn't even protect his wife, then how could he have the dignity to face Ilia, and how could he have the dignity to return to Orario to meet Hestia and Riveria? He is not a king, and does not have the strong bond and consciousness with his subjects like Rider, but he has emotions that are more important than the bond between Rider and his subjects. No matter who you are or what you are, just give me the power to defeat all enemies that stand in front of me. Walking towards the outside of Einsborn's castle, Yayu put a hand in front of his beating heart and whispered softly. It shouldn't be like this heart shouldn't be beating, something has changed, it shouldn't be like this. My former self was so cold and ruthless, like a killing machine. Step by step forward, the cold air spreads along Yayu's progress, unknowingly casting a light layer of frost on the corridors and walls. Emotion and power are like a scale that maintains balance. If you want something, you only need to reduce the weight of the chips on the other side of the scale. Maybe Yayu didn't want to use this forbidden power before, but now he deeply understands the importance of power. If you don't have the strength to talk about protecting your important people, how can you win the Holy Grail? Everything is no longer important. Where they can't see it, let me transform into Shura. Just give me power now. I need strength. As you wish. There seemed to be a snickering voice that slowly sounded deep in Yayu's heart. His originally dark pupils were slowly infected by ice blue, and finally turned into a blue frost-like color. In the atrium of Einsborn Castle, visitors have been waiting for a long time. As usual, Ryder, who was carrying his master and riding an ox cart, looked at Yayu who was walking out alone, and spoke carelessly. "Why are you out? Where's your servant, the vampire lady? I'm not here to drink tonight, I'm here to cause trouble." "There's no need, your opponent is me." With his head slightly lowered, Yayu said this in such an emotionless tone. Ryder frowned slightly, while Weber shrank back in embarrassment. The cold breath spread slowly along the quiet night. The playful expression on Ryder's face gradually faded, and soon became serious. He felt as if the man in front of him had completely changed, becoming a servant who felt pressure and danger. "Interesting, it seems that even if the opponent is you, you won't be bored. Hey, do you want a fight?" Listening to what Ryder said, Webb looked a little surprised. In his opinion, treating Mater as a fighting opponent was not a good thing. Although the Holy Grail War is said to be a battle of life and death, Weber obviously does not want to do such a thing that takes the lives of others. "Ah, that's right. Don't underestimate the opponent. This guy is not much weaker than the remaining servants. He can be said to be a completely dangerous character." Ryder said that Weber got off the bullock cart and retreated to a relatively safe place. What happened next was beyond his control. Although he fought with his servant, in the end he couldn't do anything and could only stand aside and watch. Thinking of this, Weber sighed softly, and the young man looked at his servant's back with a firm expression, and spoke loudly and fiercely. "Ryder, in the name of the command seal, you will never allow defeat tonight, and you must dedicate your victory to me." Weber didn't know why he used the command seal in such a way here. The ending of the battle between servant and master should be obvious, right? Human beings cannot defeat heroic spirits. This is a certain theorem. But for some reason Weber felt uneasy, and deep uneasiness welled up in the young man's heart. Looking at the command spells on the back of his hand, one of them was blurred, while the other two were still shining bright red. He even had the urge in his heart to use all the command spells. But in the end, the young man suppressed this impulse, took a step back and looked at the two people in the confrontation quietly. "Ha ha ha, this looks a bit like a master. The command seal is indeed a good thing. I can feel the power emerging from my body. Don't worry, I will never lose. I am plundering the king of heroes. How could I fall in such a place before the treasure?" Smiling and praising his master, Ryder turned around and looked at Yayu standing in front of him. Completely different from the relaxed attitude when facing Weber, deep solemnity and fear appeared on the servant's face. "The flowers and plants are all frozen to death." Shaking his head with some pity, Ryder said this while looking at the frozen flowers and plants in the flower bed next to Yayu. "Do you crave power, Ryder?" The answer was not what was asked, and Yayu didn't hesitate to ask such a question. Naturally, there is no one who does not desire power, and only by possessing absolute power can I realize my dominance and conquer everything unscrupulously. Ryder said proudly, raising the sword in his hand. "Is that so? Then what are you willing to pay for power?" As Yayu said this, he slowly raised his head, and his ice blue eyes without any vitality fell into Ryder's eyes, making this battle-experienced servant tremble. Obviously, a person with such ruthless eyes can no longer be called a human being. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 148. What have you paid for, Yayu? The Holy Grail War is a war between servants. There is no need for you to go to this extent for this. Yayu's words gave Ryder a very bad feeling. He frowned slightly as Yayu said this, and the latter shook his head gently. I didn't pay anything, I just got something back. Forget it, no matter what changes have happened to you or what decisions you have made, these are all your business. As your opponent, all I need to consider now is how to defeat you. A happy smile appeared on Ryder's face again. He drove the bullock cart and roared at Yayu. Tear the enemy in front of me into pieces and ravage and dominate from afar. The piercing sound of thunder resounded in front of Yayu, purple lightning was generated under the sacred bull's hooves, and the rotating wheels also thundered, illuminating the entire Einsborn castle in the night. The bullock cart drove Ryder to launch a surprise attack in the direction where Yayushuo was standing. Ryder did not show any mercy at all. Ryder's actions were to tear the person who stood in front of him into pieces. The cold air continued to spread slowly. When Yayu and Ryder were talking, they were surrounded by thin weapons. At the moment Ryder launched his attack, countless white mist finally took action. Stand up. Frost spreads in the air at a speed visible to the naked eye, following the rolling wheels, swallowing up all the lightning released by the noble phantasm divine power wheel. Perhaps water would be an excellent conductor of lightning, but in this terrifying frost close to absolute zero, nothing could continue to maintain its original form, not even the lightning released by the noble phantasm. Einsborn Castle, which was originally covered with snow, has now truly turned into a city of ice and snow. Weber, who was standing in the distance watching the battle, huddled pitifully and used his not so outstanding the magic power resists the cold. Fortunately, Yayu's main magic power was used to deal with Ryder, but even the aftermath made him very uncomfortable. No trace of purple lightning could be seen on the running bullock carts and divine wheels, which were completely swallowed up by the pure white frost. The frosty white color covered Ryder's noble phantasm, and then slowly covered his body, and was still spreading gradually. Ryder's forward speed became slower and slower, and the frequency of the bull pulling the divine wheel became more and more frequent. As soon as the white breath touched the air, it solidified into ice slag and fell to the ground. In the end, only the crackling sound was heard as Ryder drove forward. The ox cart moved forward with difficulty until it stopped in front of Yayu. The entire Kamui wheel was frozen in place, and Ryder's sword was raised high, but it did not fall. This thick and strong man's eyebrows and beard were all frozen with a layer of fine ice edges, and the whole man seemed to be frozen, standing on top of the bullock cart. Ryder! Weber exclaimed. He thought his servant had lost just like that, but it was obvious that Ryder would not lose to Yayu so easily. His strongest noble phantasm, the inherent barrier king's military power, has not yet been used, and now it is just a tentative battle. Test whether Yayu is qualified to face his own king's army. As expected, I still underestimate you. As Ryder said this, the corners of his frozen mouth slightly curved, revealing a somewhat ugly smile. As the big man moved his body, the sound of breaking ice kept coming from his body. To express my respect for you, let you die like a true hero. The sharp sword waved, cutting through the frost-white mist. As Ryder's words fell, a huge amount of magic power emitted from his body. Abnormal magic gathered in the courtyard, distorting the normal rules of the world, and soon opened up a world exclusive to Ryder. The inherent barrier is a great magic that interferes with the real world by one's own power. It is a magic technique that can be called a miracle. With the formation of the inherent barrier, the temperature of the courtyard, which had dropped to an extreme level, suddenly began to heat up again, and soon everything in front of him was replaced by the scorching desert. The scenery that once appeared in front of Yayu emerged again, as abrupt as a mirage. Countless soldiers appeared around the Conqueror King. Although they were of different races and equipment, looking at their strong bodies and brave knights, all of them show the strength of the army. Everyone, the person in front of you is someone who is recognized by me, someone worthy of respect, and someone who is qualified to face the opponent of my unparalleled army. The conquering king sat on his horse and shouted loudly, and the heroic spirits responded with the tapping of their shields. Although there is only one opponent, don't have any compassion for him. That would be disrespectful to him. The so-called hero is to be shrouded in horse leather. Death on the battlefield is the fate of a hero. So let you be my friends and give the most dazzling and gorgeous performance to this hero. Exactly, exactly. The majestic shouts of the heroic spirits flew across the sky. No matter whether the enemy in front of them is an insurmountable fortress, an equally elite army, or just alone, it makes no difference to them. Under the command of the conquering king, they are bound to conquer all enemies in front of them, no matter what is in front of them, they are like floating clouds. Okay, let's get started. The king of conquerors said this with a bloodthirsty smile on his face. Although he transformed into a heroic spirit, he still had the ferocious aura in his bones that once conquered the world. Although I don't know what beliefs you hold onto in your heart, and I don't know what price you paid to obtain such a powerful force, but I only know that all of this will eventually be crushed to pieces by my army. Yeah. Listening to the king of conquerors' words, Yayu smiled softly. Even though he was smiling, there was an irrepressible cold feeling. The blue eyes were full of unreal beauty. Yayu sighed softly and closed his eyes. The army, fighting, the battlefield. It's so familiar, it's so familiar. Why can't I stop the sadness in my heart? I want to cry, but I can't even shed tears. That's right, because I don't know how to cry, and the forgotten don't shed tears. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 149. After the Conqueror King unfolded his own inherent barrier, he and Yayu disappeared into the courtyard. Feeling the gradually receding chill, Weber couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If he continued to stay like this, he was really worried that he would freeze to death. However, before Weber could take a breath, he felt another powerful magic force approaching, which frightened him into confusion. What's going on? Is there another servant attacking? Weber thought with a panicked look on his face. If another servant really attacked, then he would be in danger now that he was alone. But soon he thought about the servant who was still alive, and suddenly felt that his worries were a little unnecessary. At this stage, apart from Berserker here and his rider, there should be only Saber, Lancer, and Archer left. No matter which of the three servants attacked here at this point in time, it was impossible for him to attack his master. Saber and Archer, who are kings, disdain to do such a thing, and Lancer, who follows chivalry, does the same. It seems that his worries are really unnecessary. Weber breathed another sigh of relief when he thought about this, and at this time he also saw clearly who the uninvited guest who came at this time was. Is it Saber? Did you also consider this place a target when you visit Einsborn at this time? Flandra exposed a lot of things at last night's party, so it's not surprising that she would be targeted. After all, knowing her identity as a vampire, it would be too easy to target her. Saber's holy sword would probably pose a great threat to her, right? Weber was so lost in thought that Saber had already stood in front of him. Originally, he wanted to say hello to the King of Britain, but after seeing the other person's appearance, Webb was stunned. This is how the same thing? The girl's appearance was not much different from what Weber remembered. If anything, Her temperament had undergone a huge change, and she no longer looked like the upright King Arthur before. For some reason, Weber felt an evil aura on Saber in front of him, which made the young man feel deeply uneasy. Saber didn't notice the expression on Weber's face. She stood beside the young master, frowning slightly. Naturally, strong magic power fluctuations cannot be hidden from her as a servant. There is no doubt that the only thing that can cause such huge magic power fluctuations is Ryder's inherent barrier. I see, is he imprisoned in the inherent barrier? Listening to Saber muttering to herself, Weber on the side suddenly showed a nervous expression. He didn't know what Saber was here for, whether she planned to attack Berserker or form an alliance with Berserker. If it's the latter, will she help Berserker deal with Ryder? Such a thing should not happen. As the upright Night King, Saber should not do anything to disturb a fair one-on-one battle. Just like the battle between her and Lancer at that time, it was full of chivalry that made people yearn for and admire them. My servant is having a one-on-one battle with Berserker's master. Saber, what do you want to do here? He mustered up the courage to ask Saber, but Weber's words made the King of Knights change his color instantly. What did you say? You said the one fighting Ryder was Berserker's master. Ah, yes, it is indeed Berserker's master. Yeah, you. What's wrong? Weber was stunned for a moment, not understanding why Saber was suddenly so excited. Just when he was wondering, the biting wind pressure suddenly blew around Saber, and the invisible holy sword was held in the girl's hand. What do you want to do? Weber immediately panicked. Could it be that Saber was going to kill him here? Ignoring Weber's intentions at all, Saber took a deep breath and immediately released her most powerful noble phantasm without hesitation. There was nothing wrong with Weber's feeling. Saber was indeed no longer the Saber she once was. Ever since she made up her mind to stab her master Emi Yakiritsugu's body with a sword, Saber was broken. The noble Night King who insisted on ideals and justice has died. The person standing here now is not a king, nor a righteous knight, but a girl who acts arbitrarily based on her own preferences. After getting rid of the shackles that had been bound to her body for a long time, Saber felt unprecedented pleasure. She doesn't regret what she did or her choices. It would be the greatest blasphemy and betrayal to endure it for the sake of the Holy Grail and then continue to sit idly by and ignore everything Emi Yakiritsugu did. Even if he finally wins the Holy Grail war and makes a wish with the Holy Grail, he will probably only be reviled by his own people, right? What kind of expression will they show when they learn that their king actually saved them in this way? As for why she chose to come here after leaving Emi Yakiritsugu, Saber herself couldn't figure it out. Maybe it's because she feels that Yayu is the only one who understands her, maybe because she feels that she should be the servant of Einsborn, or maybe it's something else. Saber doesn't want to know what her inner emotions are at this moment. She just wants to follow her heart and do what she thinks is right. Just like now, when she learned that Yayu was trapped in Ryder's inherent barrier, she raised the invisible golden sword without hesitation and used her most powerful treasure. Light is gathering. As if illuminating this holy sword was his supreme mission, the brilliance condensed infinitely into a dazzling beam of light. Under this intense and clear light, the night was like day, leaving Weber standing aside speechless. The figure of a hero who once illuminated the darkness of troubled times deeper than night. It has been unyielding for 10 years and undefeated in 12 battles. This meritorious service is unparalleled in the world, and this honor is unparalleled. They transcend time and space and are immortal. This dazzling sword is the crystallization of the prayer called glory that all the warriors who have disappeared on the battlefield throughout the ages have pursued and longed for throughout their lives. Taking pride in upholding this will and fulfilling this belief as righteousness, the King of Knights now loudly chanted the true name of the miracle in his hand. Its name is Oath, Sword of Victory. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 150. The light is flowing. The light roared. That is the light that can illuminate the world, that is unparalleled glory. The owner of this light is the ideal king, and the holy sword proves this. If the king's military strength reflects the commanding qualities of his noble phantasm, then the king of knights' noble phantasm, the sword of victory, also embodies her supreme belief. No one can deny the brilliance of this pride. But now, Artoria has personally tarnished this glory that belongs to her. The sword of oath that should have brought victory to his master is now being wielded for someone else's master, a person who has nothing to do with him. But, so what? Rider and Archer are right. The so-called king should live for his own beliefs. A noble and stoic king like me is nothing more than a vase. With a sarcastic smile on her face, Artoria couldn't help but clench the holy sword in her hand. The girl's faith has never changed. The sword of victory oath is a sword of faith. The greater the faith, the greater the power it can unleash. This sword is not wielded for anyone, only for one's own willfulness and belief. Not the famous Knight King Arthur, but simply wielded by the emotions of a girl named Artoria. It doesn't matter whether it's the Holy Grail War, each camp, or the Master. This is the girl's prayer and longing. Now let's pass this longing on to the person I want to pass it on to. For the first time, Artoria formalized her emotions as a girl. Although this emotion seemed a bit funny and incomprehensible, the girl no longer cared about it. Artoria knew very well that this feeling was not love, at best it was some kind of gratitude. She was grateful to Yayu for not adding insult to injury when she was most vulnerable, but for helping her. The icing on the cake is a good story, but the lack is never as good as providing help in times of need. It is precisely because of this that Yayu received Artoria's unreserved help. Even if the other party is not ungrateful, it doesn't matter, you are just doing what you want to do. Oath, sword of victory. With the girl's proud and confident shout, the magic power was accelerated by the dragon factor that was freed from its restraints, and turned into a flash of light. The spurting outflow rolled up countless whirlpools, covering and swallowing the entire courtyard. There should be nothing in front of him, but Artoria's attack caused the entire space to become unnaturally distorted. The powerful power from this world directly affects the military strength of the king who has left this world. Finally, under the light of destruction that burned everything, all the darkness was expelled, and Artoria forcibly opened a way between the two worlds. The next moment, the girl held up the sword of victory in her hand. My name is Arthur Artoria. There was no confusion, no doubt, no uneasiness. At this moment, she looked at the glorious and grand world before her with extremely firm eyes. Not in the name of the King of Knights, just in the name of the girl Artoria. Not fighting for the Holy Grail, not fighting for the Holy Grail War, just fighting for the one I love. Saber's sudden intrusion appeared directly in front of Ryder's army and Yayu, and the girl's words fell into the ears of both sides without reservation. Saber, what do you mean? Do you want to interfere in a fair duel? Ryder was unexpected by Saber's sudden appearance. He asked the girl angrily, but all he got in return was a chuckle from the other party. Don't you understand what I said? I said that I am not standing in front of you because of the fight for the Holy Grail, but as a girl named Artoria, standing in front of you to protect the one you love. Artoria's words left Ryder speechless. Not only Ryder, but also Yayu looked confused about the situation. He didn't seem to say or do anything to Saber. Why did she suddenly treat him like this? Seemingly noticing Yayu's confusion, Saber turned around and looked into his blue eyes. I don't care what you think, or whether you have a wife or children. I'm just expressing my love. Maybe you can be indifferent, but at least please respect my feelings as a king. Artoria said so sternly that the corners of Yayu's mouth twitched slightly. The other party has already said that, what else can he say? Interesting, interesting. After all, being favored by the famous King of Knights is a good story, right? But Saber, is what you just said true? You gave up the Holy Grail War and gave up fighting for your master. That's right, I have broken with my master, and now I act entirely according to my own will. You can rest assured about this, Rider. Betrayal, this doesn't seem like something you would do, Saner. So what, even a saint has a limit to his patience. And it's not that I betrayed my master, but that he betrayed me from the beginning. Saber said this, raising the holy sword in her hand and pointing it at Rider. I have to admit that both you and Archer are right. I used to be too conceited, and it was precisely because of this that I lost people's hearts. It wasn't that my people betrayed me, but that I betrayed my people. People. Saber's words immediately made Rider speechless. Originally, he looked down on Saber as the king and did not think she was qualified to be the king. But now, the girl's actions and words made him completely change his view. I don't know what changed you, but I have to admit that now you have the qualifications for me to recognize you as the king, Saber. Whether I am a king or not, I don't need you to admit it. I want to see if you are qualified to be a king, Rider. Can you tell me about my sword? Faced with Saber's aggressive questioning, Rider seemed to be stunned for a moment, and then burst out laughing. Along with his wild laughter, the army behind him also let out shouts. If you want to ask, just ask. My army also wants to see if the famous King of Knights is really as powerful as the legend says.